Good Monday afternoon, guys. My name is Jerry Miller, and welcome to the I Love CVille Show. Thank you kindly for joining us on a glorious day to be alive here in Charlottesville. We're live across Central Virginia, the Commonwealth, the country, and the world on the I Love CVille Network. We're presented by one of our newest partners, Skooma, a boutique dispensary on the Charlottesville Downtown Mall. Skooma is located right next to Rapture, and David and his team at Skooma are doing things the right way. The network is powered by Ting Fiber Internet, and I'll tell you what, we were actually talking about this earlier today. As soon as we left Comcast and switched to Ting Fiber Internet, guess what happened? Our problems went away. Ting Fiber Internet is crazy fast internet. Judah Wickhauer is the North Star of the show, our compass, keeps us online and headed in the right direction. Judah, my brother from another mother, thank you for being a part of the program. If we could, Judah, go to the studio camera so we can welcome Bob Yarbrough to the program. How are you, Bob?
I'm doing just fine. How are you today?
I'm doing well. It's great to have you here.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for inviting me. It's a good break in my routine to come show up here.
How about this? A lot of folks know you in this town.
Okay.
For those that don't, introduce yourself to everybody that's watching.
I could probably introduce myself to those who know me, too. They may not know some things about me.
Well, essentially, it's post-COVID.
Exactly.
Because we've all been at home.
Yes. No, that's been true. Yeah, so I'm retired as of 2 months ago. I'm not 106. I may look 106, but
you don't look 106.
I've been growing the beard. Had one during the pandemic. I shaved it, and then after retired, I said, "Man, I don't need to shave."
It looks like you trimmed it.
I did. I try to keep looking. Gotta look natty.
I like
gotta
it.
Look good. Gotta look good. But yeah, we've been in Charlottesville for 15 years this month.
Okay.
Moved here from Mississippi.
Okay.
My partner, Stacy, who is a physical therapist, a hand therapist here, works at UVA for UVA Physicians Group, I think is the new name. And our daughter, who was in the 6th grade at the time, ended up going to UVA, graduated, and is now in Boston, following her mother's footsteps. She's going to be a physical therapist. Come December, I'll be the least educated member of my family. I'll have 2 doctors surrounding me, and I'm more than fine with that.
I was going to say, you wouldn't want it any other way.
I am a lucky, fortunate man.
Stacy is watching, and Stacy, I said this when Bob came in. I said, Bob outkicked the coverage with you,
yeah.
Stacy. She says, that is one handsome guest on set, Stacy said.
Good for her. Well, good. Well, I have to make sure I compensate her somehow for that. Yeah, she's good. We felt like we were home when we moved here almost instantly. Got fortunate to find a great home in a great neighborhood south of town in Redfield subdivision, which I know you're familiar with, and have been there ever since. And it ended up being the best place for our family to grow. So glad we're here. We have a lot invested in this town, in our lives and our commitment. I don't think we want to move. I can't imagine that we would. I went to high school like 2 hours west of here in Covington.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, up in the hills. Moved there from Atlanta, Georgia. I was in the 9th grade, and it was the most traumatic thing that ever happened to me. I left this bustling metro area for a paper mill town, and that ended up being great too. I thrived there. Went away to school, went to the University of Georgia.
Go Dogs.
Absolutely, man. It is. If you come by my house, you'll say, it's an easy house to spot, right? It's got flags and bulldogs out front. But I decided then, man, if I ever had the chance to come back, I wanted to live in Charlottesville. And we had that opportunity about 15 years ago where I could live anywhere. I work from home. So we did that.
How did Bob Yarbrough meet the gorgeous Stacy?
You
charmed her, right?
She walked into the newsroom at the Daily Mississippian at Ole Miss. I was at a point in my life where I had gone through a dramatic life reset, I guess is the best way to say it. I barely survived the mid to late 80s, which was a rough and tumble time, and went back to school to try to recenter myself. And I was an advisor for the newspaper. In a previous life, I was a journalist. I've been atoning for that for a good while now. And she walked into the newsroom, and I was just struck. She remembers none of this, by the way. I mean, she's like, oh, when did we first meet? She'll tell a completely different story. But at that point, I just felt like that we were going to be partners. And after a couple of years, I convinced her of that. And come August 8th, if that's wrong, Stacy, let me know.
She's watching, dude.
Yeah, come August 8th, we'll be married 29 years. And so over half of that, we've now spent here in Charlottesville.
What's the secret to 29 years of marriage?
You know, I think we've been really, really fortunate that we intentionally grew as people during that time, but we didn't grow apart as we struck out on new and different paths, because I'm not the same person I was 29 years ago, and neither is she, and I don't want her to be. Never want to be stuck where someone's going, I want you to be like you used to be, right? And we got real fortunate in that path. We didn't have any traumatic events. We didn't have a child who had a significant issue or challenge. We always had a kind of a fair understanding that we would listen to each other. And I don't expect her to be perfect, and Lord, I know she doesn't expect me to. So that helps. So it's good. And we are, I guess, known somewhat as a couple out in town.
100% you are.
Yeah. So it's
you guys, when I see you,
cool
I see
space.
her.
Yeah, it's a cool space. And we're lucky, though. I think the key is we have separate good lives. She has a great, vibrant career. I had a real satisfying career. I worked with the U.S. Office of Habitat International for 20 years, and really found a lot of satisfaction there. So we had those things going for us. But now we're empty nest. We're doing great. We survived the pandemic. She's an introvert. I'm not. She really loved that time. It was hard for me, but we made it through. And now we're emerging in the post-pandemic world. We just started coming back out in public a few weeks ago.
Let's talk about that transition. What are you seeing? Because as a former newspaper guy, I don't know about you, but you're very observant.
Yeah, well,
you're very observant.
Yeah, I mean, it is. And I read something last week. We go to Richmond, or used to every quarter. We would go every 3 months, get an Airbnb, spend the night there. And one of the places we love is Lamplighter Roasters. They've got 2 or 3 different locations. And they posted something last week that said, look, we're coming back out of our restrictions. We're looking at making some changes, and we're intentionally going to evolve. We're not trying to go back to what we used to be. And I think that's going to be the key, right? I mean, nostalgia's a brutal mistress. I mean, she will hold you accountable to stuff that wasn't real, that you imagined, that you believed, and you get stuck in that space and you don't become something better or different. And I think it was just a really hard punch in the gut. The restaurant and service industry is hard anyway. Well, 60 to 80% are going to fail in the first 3 to 5 years, right? But this accelerated some of that. But it also, I think, I gave some folks a chance to think about how to do things differently and better. Getting beer delivered to your door, how great is that for the consumer, right? Amazing. I mean, I know it's a pain, but it is a good way. I am loyal now to those folks who did that for me, right? And I think that's what we're going to see is more new, unique ways to deliver an experience to me, the consumer. Because I also learned how to bake during
Bob's Baking.
During the pandemic, and I'm very particular now about what I eat, and I can't go out and get it, but I miss the experience of being in a space. And I think those folks who can manage their expenses, which are got to be insane right now. I'm not in that business, and thank you, Jesus, I'm not. It would drive me bananas. But The cost of labor rightly has gone up. The cost of any expense, leasing, materials, food, all of that has gone up. So there are going to have to be new solutions out there.
You got a lot of people watching you. I'm going to acknowledge some of these people.
All right.
Brianna Fleming Navari. She says, "Hi, Bob. So cool to see you on." Cole Scott says, "Yes." Stacy says, "Go Dogs." Alice Foytick.
It's
Wow,
my neighbor.
so awesome. Brandon Brown says, "Woo."
Yeah, he's in West Virginia.
Well, you got 5 states watching you, according to our
Nice.
heat map. Mississippi watching you. John Feller watching. Overton McGehee
Yeah.
watching. Rochelle Civio and Bill Saxton. If you guys want to give Bob some props or some praise or ask him a question, just put them in the comment section somewhere. Bob's Instagram hits all the foodie sweet spots, says Cody Wood. All right, so why don't we do this? Open-ended
All right.
question for you.
All right.
State of the Union for you,
Okay.
Central Virginia, Albemarle County, Charlottesville. Anywhere you want to go.
I'll look at this. When I was driving in today, I told you this when I came in. I came a completely different route that I would have taken 10 years ago.
Okay.
Cut through Wegmans parking lot, Fifth Street Station, came down the back way, love that cut over to Avon. And Stacy and I play this game now. Even we'll drive by something, I go, that wasn't there when we moved here. Or I can't believe that's not still there. It was there when we moved here. This is such a unique microeconomy, right? I mean, not only the university, which I guess gives a great deal of comfort to the economy, right? And this UVA is not going anywhere. The medical community is strong here. But it's not a big place, which is good and bad, because if things go bad, they really go bad, right? So I don't know, man. How this economy and the folks who live here emerge with a different expectation of what life's going to be like in Charlottesville is going to really peg our dynamic. You know, it's trite. No one likes change. You don't have the choice. Sometimes you do. But when it's forced on you, how are you going to react and how are you going to evolve? And it seems like a lot of the projects that were on the drawing board before the pandemic are still there. People still want to invest money in Charlottesville. I think this data science school is the sleeping giant here. It has the potential to drive a community that, well, Lord, I hope it doesn't end up as crowded and as stressful as Austin does. But that has the real potential. So I think it's a great space to dream. We are intentionally struggling with the right issues. We moved here from Mississippi. I grew up in the South my whole life. And as a journalist in Mississippi, and I think was you always knew there was very little. There was a lot of under-the-table racism, but there was a lot you could really see, right? And it, in some ways, was liberating because, I mean, a big hunk of my heart still lives in Mississippi, and they're struggling hard, and they're embracing the issues, and they're fighting for what's right. And as I traveled around the country with my job, I didn't see that a lot of places. I saw people just trying to get by. And I think that's what's happening here coming out of the pandemic, especially is how are the folks in Charlottesville embracing those issues where they're the right ones, they're ugly, they're painful, but it's a hell of a lot better than shoving them under the table. It doesn't feel like it at the time, right?
So you see that as a positive coming out of the pandemic?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that to me, there's great beauty in surviving and fighting and coming out. And I've not ever lived my life in a contented fashion. And when I have, Stacy calls me out on it. And she goes, "You're just getting by." And that's not who you are. And I don't think Charlottesville just gets by.
I'm going to throw this to you, Bob. Charlottesville finding its identity, certainly post-pandemic, certainly post-A12.
Mm-hmm.
I want to go back to the data science school. Joffrey Woodruff, he's the hedge fund titan, QIM.
Yeah.
His office right across the street from ours. For those that don't know, Joffrey Woodruff bought the ICE Park, and he's converting it to Code, the Center of Developing Entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
He also donated $125 million to UVA to form what Bob acknowledged, and he's exactly right, the data science school. So the data science school is essentially going to be, to use a sports analogy, because my friend Bob is a sports fan, it's going to be a farm system
Yeah.
for Joffrey Woodruff's many businesses, including certainly his hedge fund QIM. Data science school, the pros and cons in your crystal ball.
Well, the pros are it's unique. It's the right time. Damn, man, I did not go through a day in my last 5 years of work where someone didn't say, we need to make a decision, show us the data on it. Bring this in, this is how we're going to make decisions moving forward. It brings bright minds in when they're young, and all of a sudden they do what I did. And not that I'm bright, I may be a little bit challenged, but I wanted to come back to Charlottesville. So we create an intellectual farm system as well. The cons would be an acceleration of what we're seeing right now.
That's what I want to go down.
Yeah, we're seeing, and my heart for 20 years outside of my family was devoted to affordable housing. And I get emotional about it. It is the issue at a number of communities across this country, and it is the issue here. And it is such a deep and broad issue because it means something to everyone else. It means different. Affordable housing is not a $300,000 house for a lot of people. You go by the stats here, $250,000 or so is affordable. The risk of what happens from bringing those bright minds, that attention, and developing another layer of really good high-paying jobs is that acceleration of affordable housing. And like I said, we're struggling with it, we're grappling with it here. It's focused primarily in the city, it seems, but the county has got those issues too, right? Paying $1,500 a month just to get into a one-bedroom apartment, to me, is obscene. And you have to meet the metrics, you have to make like $60,000 a year for that to be really affordable to you. So I think that's the con is how do we manage the growth so the balloon doesn't get so big that it bursts? And it's that way with almost any positive, but I think, and I could be overstating it.
I don't think you are.
I think it has the real ability to drive us in a place where we've got to be aware where that bus is going. I'm full of analogies today.
I like it.
I'm going to throw them all out there. But we have to know where we're going. And my job with Habitat, I worked with a lot of really challenged habitat groups around the country.
So this was Habitat for Humanity USA.
Yeah, so I was a director of operational excellence for the U.S. We had, when I left, 1,200 communities around the country, and we helped develop policies in partnership with each affiliate and helped set minimum standards for them to meet and helped affiliates who were in crisis. Either something happened to them they had no control over, they had complete control over it, and they just bungled it. I never had to do anything with the group here. All prejudice aside, they're in the top 2 or 3 affiliates in the whole country.
Charlottesville.
Absolutely. And not only in the volume of what they do, but how they go about their work. Their vision is unique. It is inclusive of the community. And there's nothing happened in Southwood that the people who live in Southwood did not have and do not have a major hand in. And that is unique. I mean, folks want to literally bulldoze and build and bulldoze and build. And I've been really, it did my heart good to see Dan.
Dan Rosenzweig,
he's
CEO of
amazing.
Habitat locally.
And he is just amazing. I was always asking him, I said, please join we have a national advisory board of affiliates from around the country. I'm going, Dan, you've got to join this. And he's going, no, I got to spend my time here with the affiliate and with my family. And how do you you can't defeat that. I mean, that stops the conversation right there. But the way that the community is intentionally coming together, the way that it's struggling with this issue, I used to kid Stacy when I travel around and watch the local news, it was filled with murder and mayhem and crazy crime, right? You watch the news here and it is what nonprofit fundraisers are going on, what did city council do, but there's an affordable housing story every single week. Without fail, that's good. But to me, that's the issue.
I've said on this show, and this is going to be right up your alley here. Kevin Brown says, good job, old friend. 6 states watching you. This man, you can obviously tell, is well-traveled. 6 different states watching him on the program as we speak. Shad Gatewood giving you some prompts as we speak. And if you have a question for Bob, please put it in the feed. Newspaper watching the show. Johnny Ornalis, Bill McChency, hello. Ray Cadell, hello. Camila Priest, hello. Vanessa Parkhill, hello. Marquise Johnson, we'll get to your comments. Kelly Lewis says, Bob and Stacey are the best. Sam, too. Marquise says, congratulations on 29 years of marriage, and I'm praying for another 29 on top of that for holy matrimony. I've said on the show so many times that Charlottesville is very quickly, if not already, has evolved into this white, rich playground.
Yeah.
Here's a tough question for you.
All right.
How do affordable housing efforts keep the same speed or momentum as the free market?
Yeah, they don't. They don't without significant investment. And not just, it has to be investment where the return is not necessarily measured in what hard dollars are the investors getting back. My old editor and publisher, I was the editor of the Mississippi Business Journal. The old publisher there, they're going to kill me if they're watching. They're not really old. They're older than I am. Kevin and Rosalie were serial entrepreneurs. They ended up starting this movement centered on businesses creating a bottom line for social capital. Right? I mean, it's not just goodwill. It's a tangible social capital. And they have this big conference out in San Francisco every year called SoCap.
Explain what social capital is.
Well, social capital is you make an investment to make your community better. It doesn't necessarily mean I get more money, but it does in the long term because you survive and you can book it on your bottom line on your books. You can carry it. But people need to invest in it. It doesn't just happen. You can't just go out and do a press release and all of a sudden your social capital comes up. So people need to invest in, I think, public-private investment in making affordable housing a priority. And also in building, and this goes beyond it, but this is what the affiliate here does well. They build community. And that's kind of, I think, what you're getting at, man. How do you, we'll go out driving sometimes, and by that I mean between breweries, if we're not walking between them. And you see some houses that don't belong in that neighborhood. And I get it. You want to be close. But my goodness, you're just going to drive out what makes it unique is not a bunch of rich white people hanging out. You know, what makes Charlottesville unique is the very essence of who we are. It's just folks struggling to make it, and they've come here. It's not a gold rush, but folks have come here for a reason, and they want their lives to be better. And if you start squeezing out, it's just hard. I mean, we used to work a lot with communities that were in resort areas. You go in, like in Colorado and Utah, and how do you create affordable housing there? Because folks will buy houses and not come to them but a month out of the year, and it's taking up all this real estate and all this land, and it drives the prices up, and you can't build there. But the awareness of being able to take care of that and the value of taking care of it, I don't want to live in
A homogenous community.
I can't do it. And, I'm lucky. Our neighborhood is not highly diversified, but the 2 streets we live on are fairly well diversified. Sam's better because she grew up in that space, right?
Sam's his daughter.
Yeah. Hello, Samantha, if you're out there. You should be studying. And you lose that, you lose this. You don't have a CVille to love anymore. You have a different place. And I don't know, man. It is mixed income neighborhoods or what folks throw out, but you've got to really mix in the neighborhood. It's not just two homes for 18 units. You don't allow folks who throw up 1,000 units downtown to be able to buy out their obligation to creating affordable units. To me, that's just crazy.
He's talking about the proffer process.
Yeah.
So you know this better than I do. We're all learning from you. Dave Warwick calls you the Rev. He's watching right now. Dave Warwick, we love you on this show, Dave Warwick.
Yes.
Ann Spigley, we are very impressed here in Arlington, Virginia. 6 states watching the Rev here on the I Love CVille show. Keith Smith says PPPs work.
Yeah.
We want to go down that road. So he is the chairman of the Thomas Jefferson Community Land Trust.
Yeah.
He's big in the land trust game. He's big in the housing game here. Anywhere you want to go on this topic?
Yeah, I think it's Stacy and I were talking about this the other day about permanent affordability. I think is a path that we ask a number of our affiliates in areas like this to go by, and that pretty much means that it's kind of anathema to folks when you say this out loud. You buy a house, but you don't own the property, right?
Land trust model?
Yeah, you're like going, I got a 99-year lease on this space, and when it comes time to sell it, it's not like me going out and raking into the highest bidder. I've committed to permanent affordability, or there's permanent affordability. I think that's a path that we have to go, and I think for me, 20 years from now, owning a home is not part of the American dream.
You really? Let's go down that road.
Yeah, I don't. Samantha is. Lord, I'll get in trouble if I don't get this right.
This is your daughter.
She's 20-something years old.
Okay.
She's 27, I think. I don't know. Anyway, she and her friends don't talk about owning a house anymore. Either it's priced out or they want the freedom and the flexibility to move around. On the other end of the income scale for folks who aren't that privileged, it's just not attainable anymore. And if you can't attain it and folks don't want it, why are you making it? Why are you creating it? I don't know what replaces it, but I think we're stuck in it. It's like, remember?
Stacy says she's 26, Bob.
26, good. Thank you, Stacy.
26, Bob.
I don't know why I got stuck on 27. I want to make her older. And I just don't, we got to figure out a way where people can live together. I'm going to sound like a hippie, and I guess I am. But people got to be able to live together without the burden and the stress of worrying about shelter. And that's what Habitat was founded on. It's changed a good bit. It was, we're just making sure you have shelter. And now, all of a sudden, it's affordable housing. So what's the next step? I don't know. But you're land constrained here in Charlottesville.
That's what I was just going to ask you. I want to go down that road.
You're stuck, man. You're stuck. It's multifamily dwellings. It's, you get used to it when you're a privileged person and you go to college and you live in a dorm and you get to hang around with a lot of people, and maybe you first get out and you live in an apartment, but then you're like going, man, wouldn't it be nice to not share walls with somebody? Is that because it's nice, or is that because that's what I've been told the dream is, right? You go to New York City, everybody has walls with their neighbors. So I don't know, for here it's got to be you build up, right? How do you build up in a good way to retain the character and affordability?
How do you do that?
I don't know.
Because
Brighter minds than me need to tackle it, and I'm sure they are. But I think if we're stuck in, because I mean, it's all a fairly new phenomenon. We're less than 100 years from suburban life, right? After World War II, everybody came back. All of a sudden, they're building houses outside of cities. You either lived in a real rural space, or you lived in the city. And then it became what folks wanted to have. And then it started taking more land to build those suburban homes. And I think that we're into a new phase now of that. There'll still be the folks who have the resources to do that. But if we're going to come up with a legitimate solution, I think we end up going back to a more concentrated form of wherever we're living.
2 questions I want to unpack from there. And if you have a question from Bob, guys, put them in the feed. I see the questions coming in. Karen Colum,
Yeah,
giving
Karen
you some
Colum.
props right now. Tom, keep it coming. Carlos Hinojosa, watching you on the program.
He's in Texas.
Wagman,
Yes.
watching the show. Emily Birch, watching you on today's show. Mary Sharir.
Sure. She's in Kentucky.
She's in Louisville.
Yeah.
I see on our heat map 7 states watching the Rev on the program here. 2 questions I'm going to throw to you. We've had so we try to be eclectic and diverse with our guest list, because what we want to try to do is become in some ways the water cooler of Charlottesville.
Okay.
And to be the water cooler, we have to have many different perspectives. We've had some fantastic folks from Belmont, North Downtown, some fantastic folks from West Haven, Friendship Court on the show. And I remember one of the gentlemen who grew up in West Haven said, younger than me, said, looking up, in West Haven, for those guys, right by Peloton Station. We both like Peloton Station.
Yeah.
He said, growing up and seeing those apartment towers tower over our public housing really impacted us from a morale and spirit standpoint. I agree with you. To solve this, we need multifamily, and City of Charlottesville's landlocked 10.2 square miles. We've developed most of it, so we're going to have to go up. How do we do that in a way to not impact quality of life and morale, like in this West Haven example?
Yeah, it is. I can't speak for someone I'm not, so I want to be very careful when I say that. I know that sounds obvious, but I want to say this. What is seen as power needs to be accessible to as many people as possible. I don't know what he saw when he looked at those buildings, but he probably may have seen power and privilege that he had no access to.
That's what he said.
And it's few feelings in life are more deflating than being lorded over.
Well said.
And it's a power thing. I should do it to my dog all the time. I don't want to. I feel bad when I do it. I've done it in the past to assert myself in situations with people I felt who were weaker than I was. That is a bad feeling to feel lorded over. Also, I'm guessing there was no real involvement. I know this in early public housing, no real involvement from the folks who lived there in any decisions about how their life was going to turn out or be in that space. You get a voucher, you're told where to go, you get through the program and you get assigned to a place, you're told where to go. It's hard to be told what to do. So how do we involve those impacted in the decisions when they don't have the money and the power and the privilege? How are their voices legitimized in the decision making in a way that is not just let's hear what you have to say and we're going to make our own decisions anyway? I don't know. Here it is a real realization that I think if we don't embrace this clear, affordable housing situation, Charlottesville's going to be a place where I don't want to be, and I don't want that.
What do you call it? San Francisco,
To
Palo
happen.
Alto, Austin? You mentioned Austin?
Yeah, and I love this, but I may have some friends in Austin watching right now, and I love Austin, but there's no doubt that it grew very fast and very quickly, and it sprawled, and my goodness, it's Texas, and you got that going for or against you as well, right? It's encouraging, and it's encouraging and it's challenging, which I guess are good to have together. After August 12th, there was this great course, and I was part of it, that said, this is not who we are. There were other voices who said, this is exactly who you are. And these people out there are just providing proof of it. And I can't really legitimately argue with that. I can't. I know that's not what I saw, but I can't take from that experience. And if I go back and think about that day, that was as integrated a day as we've...
812.
Yeah, and that makes me cry a little bit.
I never thought about it that way.
That makes
you
me
are right.
And
that is devastating.
That is sad.
That is devastating.
Yeah, it's sad.
That's the most integrated I've ever seen. I was there. I was right in front of I Love CVille. That is the most integrated I've ever seen downtown. Was 812.
Yeah, it was tough, and I don't know. So, but to get back to your question, I don't know how we. If I knew how to solve these problems, I'd be on somebody else's show.
Yeah, he's saying he'd be on CNN right now. He'd be on CNBC doing
right
Squawk on
now.
the Street.
I wouldn't be caring about the stock market tanking today, but I do. I do know this. There are bright minds, and there is big money out there for this. I don't think I always believed that for our habitat groups who did well, few of them were because they really had money they didn't know what to do with. It was because they had a really great plan. They had great people on their boards of directors. They involved the community in what they did, and they built from their community up. And so I think the money's going to be there. We talk about what are the good things about the data science skill. I do think it has the ability to attract more folks who have more money to invest. I don't think money's the issue. I think it's how do we learn how to talk to each other? How do we learn how to make decisions moving forward that impact us all? And what am I going to be willing to give up out of my comfort zone to make that happen?
Neil Williamson's watching from the Free Enterprise Forum. He says, we need a variety of housing types and ownership models. # more housing everywhere for everybody. Keith Smith says, Dan also sits on the regional housing partnership with me. Dan Rosenzweig is the CEO of Habitat for Humanity. What do you make of this? And I want to learn. We all want to learn here.
Yeah.
53% of the city of Charlottesville is zoned R1 for single-family detached homes.
Yeah. You say it out loud, it sounds crazy.
Sounds crazy, right?
It just, I mean, there is great power in articulating facts sometimes, and that's one of them. You look at that and you go, that's not compatible with the dream
of home ownership.
It's not compatible with the dream of this community. And if I'm a bad romantic. I mean, I guess I watched too many. When I was growing up, too much for me, it was TBS, where they would run the old movies, and I would always see this. But I do believe in dreams, and one of the things that powers me is the belief in the beloved community. It's from Martin Luther King's belief of where we could go and what we could do. And if we want to be that beloved community, what you just, they don't sound like they go together, but what you just said out loud is not compatible with that. That is compatible with a community of me. This is my house, this is my land, this is my space. And this town is great because I'm here. That's a tough sell. You're not going to reach the beloved community with that.
How about this? Give us some insight into the history of redlining and zoning. A good example is, and you mentioned this already, there's a terminology called white flight. And a lot of cities saw folks that look like us sprinting for the suburbs.
Yeah.
And urban environments had to do something about that because they were fearful of losing their tax base. And much of jurisdiction and municipality tax base is tied to real estate taxes. So because of white flight, a lot of zoning changes were done to attract white folks back to urban cities. Anywhere you want to go on this?
Yeah, it's the legacy. It's one of those kind of insidious legacies that still sits. As I travel around the country, you would still almost lapsed into Rob Lowe and Parks and Rec and said literally. But you do see still the other sides of the tracks, which is kind of the forerunner of redlining, right? You know, you had this line, and over here was what you wanted it to be, and over here is what you wanted it to be. And to still have to deal with, you can still see it. If you don't know what was redlined in Charlottesville, you can still tell where it was redlined.
Explain that.
Well, you can drive around and see folks who look alike all living clustered together and forced into a space that's not the most desirable space. And bless their hearts, you come out with laws against it, and real estate agents can't redline now. You can't do it. But there's got to be some unspoken de facto redlining still, just as a legacy, just because of what you've been told you should expect where you should live, where you feel better about where you live. And all those things are tied up in that history, right, of marginalizing and ghettoizing folks and pushing them into a space where hopefully they're not seen a lot, hopefully you don't hear a lot from them. And the other advantage to privileged folks back then is they knew which part of town to go to and which part not to go to. And you can still see the impact of that. Man, real estate is crazy. Like I said, I worked in affordable housing for 20 years, and I could never really wrap my mind around everything that goes on in that game. And sometimes I didn't want to. Sometimes I don't want to know everything. I just want to fight for a solution. But I do think one big bonus we have here is our size. We're big enough to matter, but not so damn big you can't turn things around and make changes. It's one of the appeals of living in Mississippi. I could always tell when someone did something good because it changed dramatically. You could see it. Charlottesville is small enough where you can see that, but big enough where we have the resources where we can turn some of those legacy issues like redlining around.
I'll play devil's advocate with you for the sake of a talk show. For the sake of a talk show.
I won't hurt you.
Okay.
All right.
The devil's advocate perspective, and it's a perspective shared by many in the community, is if you have housing prices continue to rise, and the data science school keeps creates more six-figure jobs in the community than the various jurisdictions, Charlottesville, Albemarle, Fluvanna, Louisa Orange, etc. They benefit. Because you have folks that have deeper pockets in here
Right.
with more disposable income to spend more money within the municipalities. They benefit because the housing stock gets more expensive, so the municipalities get more tax revenue from a more expensive house than a lower priced house. Then the perspective is you can then allocate that incremental tax revenue to whatever endeavor you want to champion, you want to pursue, whether it's affordable housing, social justice, schools, roads, EMTs. Thoughts on that?
That's nice to think of, right? But man, if you don't have the commitment to book that money and allocate it directly to the resources, you end up with people sitting around in committees all day, not knowing what to do.
Bullshitting.
I mean, yeah, and
That's what you're gonna say?
Yeah, it just sits there. The dreaming part, the intentionality part, if you're going to have that whole like rising tide mentality, you got to make sure that people are at least on that boat that's going up. That takes intentionality to make sure they have a ticket, to make sure they have a job, to make sure whatever they do to get access to that ship that's going to rise because of this great tide that's going to bring everybody, they got to at least be there. And they're all not going to have the same experience. Boy, it'd have been nice to live in Biltmore House after the Vanderbilts built that thing. I think they did. If they didn't, someone else can tell me I'm wrong about this. But everyone who lived there was not happy to be in that house, right? There were folks living there who had menial jobs to do. You could say their position in life grown. They weren't living in a shack somewhere in Asheville, right? They're living in this nice house. But that's not a life. So this rising tide, you've got to be intentional about who's on that ship and how they're going to live in that space. And if you get in a space where county and city governments all of a sudden have unplanned for surpluses, that's some ugly stuff, man.
Talk to me about that.
It is stuff I've watched. One of my jobs was to go, I lived in Vicksburg, Mississippi, which was a very interesting place to live. We could do a whole show about living in Vicksburg, Mississippi. And I used to go to city council and county board of supervisor meetings all the time. And I can remember one year where they had a surplus. And they were like going, don't tell anybody. Because they're going to be knocking on our doors all day. I said, well, don't you have a plan for what this thing? And no one plans for surpluses in government. I was like, I think that's all the state of Virginia now has, this huge surplus. Don't you think that everyone's banging on Northam's door right now going, all right, affordable housing, food deserts, the whole health care, everything. So I don't know, man. It gets ugly when there's lots of money if you don't have the right people in place, and if you don't have the right plan in place, you're lost. And that's what you'd see in these meetings like that. All of a sudden they got extra money. What do we do?
Neil Williamson says surplus in government equals overtaxation. You agree or disagree with that?
I don't feel like my taxes changed that much this last year. And the state of Virginia's got a lot of extra. But sometimes surpluses they miss the mark in their projections of what's going to happen. I mean, I think probably last year, I know we did this, even at Habitat. We were trying to figure out how many of our affiliates were going to fail because of the pandemic. Being shut down from other stores, couldn't operate or anything like that. We didn't lose that many because of it. I don't think things ended up being quite as draconian and awful as the planners projected it to be. So sometimes it's not always extra taxation.
Okay, a lot of questions coming in for you here. Bill McKenzie asks, Jerry, what's your guest take on the upzoning plans the city is doing?
I don't know enough about that to actually reply to it.
Okay. This question's coming. Lauren Koch says Bob Yarbrough is awesome. You got the Jack Brown's crew watching you here. I didn't realize you were a saint at Jack Brown's.
I am a saint. Do you realize this? There are...
That's 1,000 beers, individual beers on cards where you... I'm not quite that far. It's cards where it's 100 beers per card. You have to have individual beers per card. So 100 individual beers, then you can start back up again with another 100. He did that 10 times.
I did. That's a lot of money, isn't it? I talked with them the other day. It was one of the places I went to when I went out and about for the first time.
You talked to Rick?
Rick has told me they have 438 notchers right now. That's folks who've hit 100. And there are 43 saints now. That is, I know that's a topic shift real fast, but that kind of goes back to what we started the conversation with. They've got this real simple loyalty plan that makes sense to the restaurant more than it makes sense to me, right? Well, there's this achievement, but at some point you go, yes, I drank 1,000.
Yeah, right.
Right.
And you got a shirt, you got to pick a burger, and you got to put a beer on tap.
Right. And but it's a great, and I think that's where you go, right? You build loyalty. You know more about your customers. They know about me. More and more.
The data.
It's the data, and it's their model. I mean, simple food, pricey beer, low lease space. Everywhere they are is in some
box.
Kind of box.
In fact, it used to be called the box.
Yeah, it used to be the box.
Yeah.
I remember a few times in the boxes I probably shouldn't remember.
Right, a conversation for another day right there. Same with me, guys, and you guys know that. How would you characterize, multiple people asking, how would you characterize local government and local leadership?
Here? What a weird setup for governing. Right? You go around like this. When I would travel around and I would have to, even before our current mayor, other mayors would speak and make news. The identity of mayor outside of Charlottesville carries a different meaning than it does here in Charlottesville. You would go, all right, yes, but we didn't actually elect that mayor. I didn't. I live right outside the city. But the people of Charlottesville elected a representative, and those representatives got together and they picked a mayor.
That's correct.
That is a weird dynamic. It is antiquated and strange and makes absolutely no sense to me. I'm sure it makes sense to other folks who are brighter than I am, but I'm just a simple mind going, when I grew up as a kid, everywhere I went, we elected the mayor.
So in Charlottesville, he's exactly right. We elect city councilors. 5 city councilors in the city of Charlottesville then pick the mayor amongst them 5.
Yeah. It's weird, right? And it's like you may have someone who represents you as the de facto elected leader of your community who you had no direct choice in saying yes or no to. It's weird. It makes it hard, I guess, probably to govern in some ways, particularly when you're going, I can imagine that you have to do some explaining when you're talking to a company who's thinking about locating here. Look, our system of government's a little bit different. This is the mayor, but it's not really who the public voted for. It's weird. I spent hours and hours of my life in board of supervisors meetings, and I'll say that the group here seems to be certainly open-minded. They don't always do what I want. My supervisors are going to take on, I don't know who they're going to be in the next 4 years, but I live in the south part of town.
Yours is Liz Palmer. The new one is what? Dr. Andrews Neil Williamson, running unopposed.
Right. So in 8 years, 4 to 8 years, whoever that person is going to be really vital in my life, because the more that happens south of town, the more important it is to have representation for what I want to see and don't want to see.
And your part of town's blowing up.
It's insane. And that's part of the discussion. I'm like, when we moved here 15 years ago, this wasn't here. We moved
You didn't have the Wegmans.
We didn't have the apartment complex
Yeah.
behind us.
Right.
I mean, nothing. I went to Alabama, came back, and all the land had been cleared. And I was like, oh, what the hell is going on here? I never had to look right when I pulled out on the 5th Street from Sunset. I do now. And those things are good, right? I mean, Wegmans is nice. Our quality of life is nice. Our property values have gone up since it's there. I like 5th Street Station.
When you got homes trading in the neighborhood now in the fives.
Yeah, it's crazy. So I'll care more then. I hate to say that, but I am surprised when I was an outsider when I came here. Also the structure in Virginia is different with the town and city structures that exist in some spotty places around the state, right? I had been through a number of annexation battles and stuff where city and county kind of had to get together and they became a consolidated government.
Would you like to see that here?
I think, to go back to an earlier question you asked about the data science bringing in all these high-paying jobs and what do we do, then it really begins to make a lot more sense, right? I mean, when the solution is an Albemarle County solution because it's grown too big to be just a Charlottesville solution, it would be nice not to have warring factions trying to making decisions like this crazy, what do you do with parking at the courthouse that's technically
in the city?
Yeah,
when it's Albemarle County
courthouse. It's Albemarle County, and my daughter, Samantha Ray, went to Burley, which is in the city. We live in the county. It was weird. But I think there would be vocal pros and cons on either side of that. Someone dilutes their power, right? It's not a equal power exchange, but for the better of the community, at least Albemarle County and Charlottesville probably would need to consolidate. I would see that as a plus.
Are you more bullish city of Charlottesville or Albemarle County?
Damn. Sometimes why did I say yes to come on this show?
Real questions.
It is a real question.
Yeah.
It's hard for me sometimes to identify as being a county resident.
Okay.
I mean, we live right on.
You're in the urban ring.
Yeah. I live right on that space, and if there was aggressive annexation,
It'd probably be there.
It'd be annexed. So when I would travel, I never told folks I lived in Albemarle County.
You'd say Charlottesville.
I said I lived in Charlottesville.
Me too.
And so those are just inextricably
Connected.
entwined. If I lived in Charlottesville, and I don't know what I would think of folks saying from the county who said they lived in Charlottesville. I don't know how I would feel about that. And I have to be real careful, and I've made this mistake, I'm sure, 10,000 times during this conversation. It's not my mayor. It's Charlottesville's mayor. I had no voice in voting for council. I had no voice in the mayor. The tax rate is different right across the street from me almost, so, but.
You're what, a quarter of a mile from the city-county line?
Yeah, easy.
Right?
Yeah. It's nothing. And you're right. I mean, I hadn't thought about it, but if there was an annexation, maybe that's the perfect place now. It's not only for the tax base that's there, but what's going to be there. But I would say I identify Charlottesville.
So you're more bullish Charlottesville?
I would say so. I think the more we think of this as Charlottesville, maybe is the better we'll come up with better answers. But I realize thank you for asking me the tough question.
You're a former journalist.
I know, that's right. I told you. I spent my last 25 years atoning for that. So.
Nathan Wickline?
My neighbor, Nathan.
Nathan Wickline, this may be the greatest interview ever. Carlos Hinojosa? Loyalty. Take it to the bank. 9 states watching you and some Habitat USA folks on the stream here. Daily Progress watching you as well. Throw this to you. Urban Ring, for those out of state or Northern Virginia watching, the Urban Ring is this ring right around the city. Right around the city of Charlottesville and Albemarle County. He very much lives in the urban ring.
Mm-hmm.
You've touched on this already. We take the urban ring, we're just hypothesizing here. We take the urban ring and we assimilate it into the city. We call that Charlottesville.
All right.
The pros and cons are.
Well, increased tax base, better chance of growth, more room to grow.
Complementary infrastructure.
Yes, and complementary planning, I think, is another big part. The cons, schools would have to be rethought, I think. You'd have to settle on a different form of government, I think. I think the services would already be there. I don't think it would. You'd need more fire stations, you'd need more infrastructure. I don't think there are a lot of cons to it, other than the ones we mentioned. I think it's clear that one of my neighbors, Letty, was on the show not long ago talking about Mountain View School and the challenges there. There are a lot more incumbent planning issues that would be problematic, I think. But boy, it'd be a fight, though, wouldn't it?
Oh my, it'd be a dogfight.
Oh,
It'd be a dogfight. And Neil Williamson and Bill
Yeah.
McKenzie both watching. Just a hypothesis, a conversation for a talk show. Neil says, for what it's worth, annexation is not available due to Charlottesville per state code. We know
Yeah.
that. Just a conversation starter here. Marquis says you're woke, and he says, damn right, Charlottesville all day, all over the county. And he said he was 10 living off Fifth Street when it was nothing out there in 95. When Exxon was a shack trying to get gas, Burger King did not exist and the county office building was owned by Wachovia Bank. Marquise Johnson watching from Hampton, Virginia right now. Robert Radifera says, love you, Robert Radifera. Your former neighbor, the photographer of my beautiful wife and I's wedding, and just a stand-up guy, Robert Radifera. Totally agree with Nathan, Robert Radifera is saying. Tom says, Spiggle says, you're the man.
It's my cousin, by the way.
Where's he watching?
He is
Lynchburg?
He is in Arlington. He's an attorney.
Okay. He
in
says
Arlington.
Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
So 9 states in the District of Columbia watching Bob Yarbrough right here. Charlottesville versus Mississippi.
Oh. Common things. A tie to history. Both struggling to do the right thing. Both, too, have a significant amount of their population. Let's see if I can say this right. Hell, I don't care. I'm retired. Folks who have been in power in Charlottesville and controlling life, folks who are in power in Mississippi who've been controlling life, are perilously close to being edged out of that space and pushed over the ledge. And when they do, they react like most people do. They fight back really aggressively, very hard to protect what's theirs. Those things I see in common here.
Did that crescendo at 8/12?
I think trying to think of a proper analogy. I used so damn many today. But it certainly surfaced, and what was disturbing to me was the comfort with which those obscene and extreme positions strolled through town. And in some ways, there are people who are comfortable in their position in Mississippi who had no problem saying, who they are and what they were. But for here, it was, for me, what elevated it when I had time to reflect, and this came months later, I'm ashamed to say, it was that what we talked about earlier. This is who we are, and those folks came from the outside, and they kind of pushed it up there. But folks who are in power don't want to be out of power, and it's that old kind of saying that King stole from another pastor about the moral arc of the universe bending towards justice. You're not going to stop the wave of what we are becoming. We are becoming more diverse. We're becoming stronger. We're becoming better. You cannot defeat that. You can put up a fight, but you're going to lose. It may not be in my lifetime, but you will lose. You will not, and when I was born, there were few, if any, black and female members of Congress, period. And if they were, you knew exactly who they were. I knew who Shirley Chisholm was growing up because that was one of the few I had to look at. Look at where we are just in that part of my lifetime. You will lose, but that fight going forward is going to be nasty. And it's controllable here, I think. I think it's not as... We have a defined geography. We have defined problems. We have defined space. It's just going to be a hard slog fight through it. And folks who are in power now will not be in power. It's not a revolution. It's just a reality.
Your aunt's watching, Zelma Milton.
Yes, she's in Florida.
She says, "You go, nephew." You go, nephew. Ben Bird is watching from Allegheny County, he says. Dwayne Gordon says, "Bob is great. I worked with him in his journalism days and will now also refer to my post-journalism career in nonprofits for the past 20 to 25 years as atonement as well." It's from Dwayne Gordon right there. Neil wants to know if Vicksburg elects via wards or at large.
I can't remember. I think that, so it's been 35, 40 years since I was there, but we had wards. We had aldermen. I remember that.
Okay. Man, I could spend, the only thing missing from this is a Minuteman from you, Dave Warwick. It's the only thing, and I have some in the fridge over there, Dave Warwick, and by some I mean 48 of them, which I got on a $25 case Monday.
Nice.
Why don't we do this? We are 71 minutes in.
All right.
Okay, and you've carried the show. Final word. Anywhere you want to go. Poignant prose from
prose.
Bob Yarbrough.
Poignant prose. I know. I guess I'm thankful that I had the opportunity in life to choose where I could live, and I'm glad I chose Charlottesville. There's nothing that's happened over the 15 years we've been here to dissuade me from thinking that I don't want to be here as long as I can. As long as I can get up and down the stairs at my house, I want to stay in my neighborhood. I love my neighborhood. I love my neighbors and that community we've created. And I am at a point in life, my dad died when he was 60, and I'm 59 and a half. And that's one of the things that drove me to retire early. I am thankful that for the foreseeable rest of my life, I'm going to be in this community. I'm glad to be here. I'm glad you asked me to come on the show.
Thank you for joining us.
Absolutely.
May I invite you back?
Yeah. I got nothing to do. I'm gardening now and cooking.
Well, it's almost college football season.
That's right. Well, there you go. I'll be ready for that.
Bob Yarbrough, as you can tell, is one of the A-plus people in this community. We will undoubtedly welcome him back for Jonathan, Grayson, and Lauren Navarez, who's asking about bringing this gentleman back to the show. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks, man.
Thank you, Bob Yarbrough. Tomorrow, guys, we're back for the I Love CVille Show at 12:30, and we are back with Real Talk at 10:15 a.m. This show, real conversation, in a dynamic setting, social media, the show on every social media platform possible. We just have to We have real talk, and we hope that real talk leads to action. Because while we're bullish on the community, we're also somewhat apprehensive of the avenues and paths that it could go if we're not careful. My name is Jerry Miller for Bob Yarbrough and Judah Wickhauer. This is the I Love CVille Show. You guys take care.
Thank you, sir.
Killed it.
Oh, thanks.
You
Hadn't
have a
done
good
this in
time?
a while.
Was it fun?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's fun. I enjoyed it too. Let's get your picture real quick.
All right.